I've been observing something, and it's around this word support. It's around support, the concept, the experience of support. It is changing, and we're not quite correlating that support. And that's why I said the word support, okay? Because, see, we had a mapping in our brain with our past experience of what support meant to us, the need, how we needed to be supported before, how we offered support to others. And that correlation, because this need is starting to shift to presence, that's the only way to explain it. We don't quite correlate that to, but it is support in what we need, but also in how we give it to others. So it's very interesting to me. Again, it's so subtle, and they're very like, it's so easy to really not have this understanding in the day to day. And the reason why I see it, because that's my space, that's my work, right? I hold presence for another, for their nervous system to reorganize in the way they are made, right? In their authenticity, in their sovereignty. And with enough presence from another, they don't need help, or many of them, or the way I work, right? They don't necessarily need help in a cognitive, emotional way, right? Because this is our past support, what we called support, which is really all around validation, right? They're just fractals of validation. Before, support meant that we found another that could understand us. We found another that could hear us. We found another that would share our same values. Basically, it was a validation of our existence, of our worth to exist the way we are. But there was this cognitive, that was still the story that we can trace back, right? The validation that the trigger was real, and then the trigger that stemmed from this experience, right? This from this earlier conditioning, and there was a story and a tracing within ourselves and within our logic that was tied directly into our behavioral, emotional mechanism. Well, now that we've moved through this layer, at points in our day, there are triggers, or there are things that we simply react to, and we don't know why. We lost that trace. It's like I don't see the logic. And I'm talking to somebody that has moved through such clarity of their experience in this lifetime, right? They've spent so much time in their own observation that now they're moving into layers of themselves that I'm going to call epigenetic, that I'm going to call akashic, multidimensional, quantum, and maybe very foundational. It is literally how they're wired, how their nomad functions, how simply they are. So it kind of reminds me of that root cause analysis process where you're asking why something has failed 5 times, right? Why did this happen? Okay, you're taking that why and you're asking why, why, right? And that's kind of how we've been needing the support to be for us to understand within, for us to correlate our behavior and our triggers to this cognitive validation. And that support was enough. But now that we can't find that logic, and there's also this tiredness where it's like I'm kind of tired to constantly hunt for this or to be this detective. But it's because it's getting so difficult, and sometimes we fall into this rationality. I can rationalize something, but is it really true? And it's because we're getting into layers that we don't know why we react. We simply have this instinctual thing to react to these triggers without having the understanding. So if in the spaces like, therapy or the work that I do, this support is very deliberate. It's very intentional and it's structured. And why I'm talking about this is because I'm seeing this environment start to spill over outside of very intentional workspaces. And I'm seeing happening with others. Others are holding support, which is presence, because now we're talking not ego to ego, personality to personality, constructive, this persona that came about due to this conditioning. We're starting to talk nervous system to nervous system. And that's the level of support that's starting to show up in relationship, and we don't know what to call it, right? It's very confusing because before this when we found another person that validated us, support felt fuzzy. It felt nice. And this presence type support, which is directly touching our nervous system, not our level of comfort on a emotional, logical wavelength, it doesn't really feel that fuzzy. It kind of feels a little bit cold, right? Right, where to put a color, right? Before it was like a fall orange, like yellows and reds, like soft reds, like very warm. And this level of support is more bluish, is more purplish. Is like my shirt, with a lot more blue actually, right? It's interesting that I correlated like that, right? Because it's like auric. It's oh, this is so fun. Anyway, um, and we don't call that support. So my invitation here, this video is really about if validation is no longer the main, because it's still going to be somewhat there, but if it's no longer the main way support is organizing for you, what is it then? What does support actually mean to you? Because now support is moving from something that's more static, more understanding based, into something that's more nervous system functional based. It is useful at a way different level. And what's interesting is because I'm observing this in others, because I know what that presence looks like in a very deliberate space. And others start to practice that without really understanding what it is. And it looks clunky. Yes, it looks not that smooth. But because I know what that is, I can recognize it and I can say it is a beginning. It is a huge beginning to me. Uh, uh, because it talks about that we've moved into a higher octave love for each other. So now it just means that, can you maintain relationship in presence despite nervous system flare-ups? Nervous system flare-ups that don't follow a logic that we can engage in and we can gain that understanding. It's just presence and allowing of the nervous systems to reorganize themselves, with validation being already a foundational acceptance. You're already validated, but we don't have to go through the process of that cognitive emotional wiring, because we're beyond this lifetime's cognition. So where are you getting the story from? It might have to be your ancestors if you're in that epigenetic layer, right? And it's like, how much do you know about their life? Or it just could be even, this is how you truly are. You function at this level. So can you reorganize your life with how you are now? Which means you need a level of support that allows presence in that relationship. And I'm seeing it happening. It's happening. And instead of us saying, I receive support from this person, we're just seeing how this person wasn't impressed with us having a tantrum. They didn't leave, they were there. They were really not interested in my story, and they didn't participate, or they didn't encourage me going into the story. They were simply holding this space, but I didn't get the validation. I didn't get the support the way it was feeding the need in my head to call it support. So I left that interaction sort of weirded out. It's this blue, right? It's like there was still a relationship there. There was still this exchange. There was still, the other person didn't abandon me. It just didn't join me in the tantrum that I was having, right? In this nervous system flare up. Yet, a day from when that happened, or even 2 days when that nervous system reorganized and settled down, it's like, oh, but I'm a different person today. I have a bigger understanding. I can see things from a way different perspective. And wow, that moment that I had with this other person was truly something of substance. So I'm seeing that happening again outside of these deliberate sessions with people who can who can hold that presence and not lose themselves in the other story, but we're not calling it support. And I'm like, that is a love that we haven't quite correlated as love yet. We haven't correlated as a functional support that is helping us reorganize ourselves, because we've moved into the sovereign, authentic self. We talked about now about authenticity and sovereignty for I don't know how long, but now we're practicing it, and we're mature enough in who we are. Again, it's not perfect. It's the beginning of it. You know, give yourself, and everybody, we need to give ourselves some allowance with these words, but I'm seeing it very clearly how these spaces that are deliberate is moving throughout friendship, all kinds of relationships that we're having. It is so worth naming, so worth questioning. What do we need now as support as we're changing into behaving from this authentic, sovereign being where we can hold who we are, which means the reorganization and the level of, it is a self-healing that is happening without interference from another, without and this interference is without influence from another, which means the other can only give us support through presence. So anyway, that is the invitation. Watch how you're giving support, but even more so, if validation is not the main axis that you now need to be supported, what is support becoming for you? And this, it's difficult to understand the hugeness of what this means, because the ripple effect, the more we understand this, just this little slight word, and how this correlation of the experience and the word is rewiring, the ripple effect is, I can't even begin to understand how this is alone is going to change our quality of life and our relationship, and this resilience in staying in deliberate choice within relationship. So anyway, that has been my observation. I hope you found something useful in it. If you want presents, check out my offerings on my website. I really wish you a beautiful week. Until next time.